The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the Dibble Institute's second Wednesday webinar. Today's webinar is One-on-One, a new approach for teaching mind matters in individual settings. I'm Irene Varley, Director of Education, and I'm so pleased to be with you today. I want to introduce Rebecca, who is our technical wizard today. She is filling in for Kathy, who is typically with us. So hi, Rebecca. Thank you so much for being with us today as well.
Hi, no problem.
So let's go with some housekeeping tips. You'll see on the slide that if you have any difficulties with your audio, you can also join us on the phone, and while being on the phone, you can watch the webinar on your computer. Just make sure you indicate that you are using your phone for audio. And the invitation is at the, Rebecca, if you want to go to the slide showing housekeeping. Thank you. There is, use your phone number and access code as listed above here. And there's going to be different ways to participate. We really want you to feel like you are a part of the webinar. So you can, there's going to be a poll question and you'll have a multiple choice to answer. And you can also put your questions into the question box. However, I'm going to ask this as a favor, because if you put your question in while the presentation is going on, it makes such a long list, it's hard to get back to the top question. So, and when the presentation is finished, if you would insert your questions into the question box at that time. As thoughts come to you, put them down on a piece of paper so you'll remember them and can jot them down later. Okay, so now let me talk a little bit about the Dibble Institute for those that are brand new. Who are we? Next slide, please. This is a picture of Charlie and Helen Dibble. Charlie is the founder of the Dibble Institute, which makes sense. And Charlie was very interested in his work with youth, that he saw many of them at the time were experiencing family breakups. And it led to a lot of confusion and also some lack of a confidence in building a healthy relationship. So Charlie started to look for research on what was being done or studied to enhance a young person's understanding and skills for building a healthy relationship. Well, at the time, he couldn't find anything because most of the research was being done with couples regarding relationships. So Charlie felt very strongly that it has to be research-based. And so we have definitely agreed with him and held on to that concept. With that in mind, Charlie actually started the Dibble Institute, and this was back in the mid-90s. So we've been around a while, and during our last 10 years, we estimate that we have actually reached 1.5 million youth, which is quite an accomplishment. But it's people like you who work with youth, who care to get solid evidence-based information to your youth, that we are thankful for. So let's look at what the Dibble Institute believes in. Next slide, Rebecca. Next slide. The Dibble Institute, just in keeping with Charlie's vision, believes in research. All of our programs are research-based. We strive to keep it current with current research, and that is what you can expect when you purchase our programs. Next slide. We believe strongly that in the creation of stable, safe, and healthy families. Without that, our youth are at a great disadvantage. Next slide. The Dibble Institute believes that all people deserve respect. So, no matter what their sexual orientation or culture or religion, whatever the diversity is, we know that all people deserve respect and to learn to form healthy relationships. Our presenter today is Carolyn Curtis. Dr. Carolyn Curtis is a licensed marriage and family therapist and founder of the Relationship Skills Center in California. The Skills Center has been recognized as one of the leading organizations in the nation for building healthy relationships. In recognition of all her innovations, Carolyn has given presentations on trauma and other related themes and actually was invited to the White House. Go, Carolyn! In her clinical practice, she specialized in working with couples, issues with alcohol abuse, and trauma. In addition to her practice, she was an adjunct faculty member in the psychology department of California State University's Sacramento and the American River College, teaching child development, human sexuality, stress management, applied psychology principles, and an introduction to psychology. Carolyn has learned from all the years of her work that there is a connection of program success to addressing the trauma her clients have experienced. We are grateful for her sharing with us today help in working with your clients using Mind Matters on a one-to-one basis. It's amazing, Carolyn, that you've had time and energy left to create this wonderful curriculum. So thank you so much and welcome, Carolyn.
Oh, well, thank you. What a wonderful introduction, Irene. Thank you so much. I recently did a presentation and I commented that I have been a clinician for 35 years. It's hard for me to believe that. And then I started the Relationship Skills Center. Fortunately, when I was in my clinical practice, I studied everything that came along. So I got a chance to take a look at what works and what didn't. So we found out, and by the way, I did this with my husband, who's also a psychotherapist. We got to discover what works and what didn't work. And so you don't have to waste your time on the stuff that didn't work. And then from the Relationship Skills Center, I learned what made a great psychoeducational program. And I put what I learned into Mind Matters. And next slide. And what we know, and I'm saying just everything that you already know, that our clients have a long history of trauma that affects their lives. And we see this every day. And it was that inspiration that led me on Mind Matters. And by the way, I just want to add that today's webinar is the result of the feedback we've gotten from the sale of Mind Matters already. This Mind Matters was just published a little bit over 2 years ago, and we found out that people were adjusting this curriculum to meet their needs. And we found out that they were, and we'll go on to the next slide, we found out that people were taking my curriculum and putting it in their parenting classes. They were using it with their home visitor program, and they were using it one-on-one. And I'm going, thank goodness people were letting me know what was going on so that we could adjust or write something up to make it easier for you to make those adjustments. So, and I know that when you work with the people you serve, that you want to be able to give them the need, something to help them deal with their trauma. And I want to not be Pollyanna about this. You know, when the traumas that you see that people come to you with, they are in many cases overwhelmed with everything that has happened to them. And getting better from this is going to take a lifetime. What we can do, and I don't want to oversell this, what we can do is teach them the skills that they can use over a lifetime that will improve their well-being. So you're not going to do, 10 hours of class and people walk out and they're cured from their trauma. No, but what they will have is a window on how to go about doing it. And if they do it consistently over time, things will get better. So that is our dream, and that's my dream, and I'm sure that's your dream, is to have an idea about what you can do about it. Next slide. So what I'm saying here exactly is our clients, and by the way, when I've done these trainings, I have discovered that the staff also, in many cases, have had trauma, and that they need to learn skills to overcome their own trauma. So don't be surprised as you go through this that your staff says, we need this for ourselves too, and please take this material and use it for them also. So let's just take a brief look at why we're doing this. And the next slide. Okay. So we are going to look at skills to overcome adverse experiences. And a couple of things to remember is that no one method works with all people. And the other item I want you to remember is, and we're going to probably say this to you a dozen times, this is not going to be psychotherapy. And what is the difference is in psychotherapy, you're going to deal with specific items. We're not going to deal with individual traumas. If somebody wants to talk about their specific trauma, they need to go see a therapist. This is a program designed to build skills. Next slide. So let me just give you where the inspiration came from to do this program. And it came from going to a trauma workshop, and here was this slide. And what this slide said was that when they did a review of the research on recovering from trauma, and they looked at 54 different trauma experts, they found the 6 paths for healing: emotional regulation strategies, narration of traumatic memory, cognitive restructuring, anxiety and stress management, interpersonal skills, meditation and mindfulness interventions. Now, when I saw this slide, and by the way, I'm in this room where everybody is a psychotherapist. People are not coming to this workshop because they have a framework at looking at psychoeducational programs. When I looked at this, I went, oh my goodness, 5 out of these 6 can be moved into a psychoeducational program. The only one that we cannot do is the narration of a traumatic memory. And that was the inspiration for what we're doing. So when you look at the skills we are teaching, they will be in 5 out of these 6 categories. Next slide. This is one of my favorite quotes. It comes from Dan Siegel, who is one of the preeminent neuropsychiatrists. And he says, "We cannot think our way into a new way of being, but what we can do is grow our brain." And that is really the focus of this whole Mind Matters, is growing their brain. So it's not going to be things that are really logical, because, and I'm just going to say this to you because, okay, and we'll go take a look at the next slide. The next slide. And please follow me as we look at this slide. These are 2 brains. The brain on the left is a healthy brain, and the brain on the right is a brain, both of these are 3-year-olds, and they are the brain of a child at a Romanian orphanage. The healthy brain, please notice the bottom represents the limbic system. The bottom is the part of this picture is the part that responds to stress and trauma. The top is the prefrontal cortex, which is where we do all of our thinking, all of that. Please notice that in the traumatized brain, there's very little energy in that part of the brain. And there's a lot of energy in the bottom part of the brain. So when we go to teach people these materials, what we have to do is soothe the bottom part, the limbic system, because the prefrontal cortex, the part where we usually think about teaching, it's not available. So we have to go from the bottom up. Think about that when we're doing this, is we're going from the bottom up. And that's why a lot of the things we're going to talk about, like music and singing and dancing, is we are reaching the bottom of the brain up. Okay, next slide. The other thing is that, remember, our nervous system is nonverbal. It doesn't speak English, Spanish. What it does do is it takes in signals and sensations into our brain center. And then the brain interprets these signs and sensations and assign words and meanings to the experience. And that's how come we have to work in so many different ways that aren't a whole lot of language, but more in terms of experience. Next slide. And then we will go back to the old material that we learned a long time ago, which is nerves that fire together, wire together. And that is the good old Pavlov, which is that as we do new things, we reward them. And now if you have something bad and you add something positive at the end, we can gradually change. When we have a memory that comes up that's negative and we tie it to something positive, eventually the negativity from that memory is reduced. You can tell that doing that over and over again takes time. And then, next slide, we go with Viktor Frankl's. And for those of you who are already using Mind Matters, good old Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. By the way, this wonderful quote that has been quoted to Viktor Frankl forever has come under dispute, so I just want to say this now, is that Dan Siegel had all of his researchers go out and they could not find a place where Viktor Frankl had said this. So I brought this up to Jeff Zeig, who was a personal friend of Viktor Frankl, and Jeff said, he said it to me, Carolyn. This is his quote. So we're going with giving Viktor Frankl credit for this great quote, because that's what we do, is we keep creating more space so people can think about what they're doing. Next slide. The other thing that we do is we build practice plans, because changing how we react and respond requires a lot of practicing. And what we know is those things that we measure, we have a greater chance of changing. So the more we can practice and record those practices, the more it will become a habit. And as Dan Siegel says, our goal here is to create a new habit of mind. So keep in mind that we have two types of learning going on, content and training. Okay, next slide. So our goal here with this program is to reduce our reactivity, grow our brain, become more aware of our body sensations, emotions and feelings, our thinking, feeling, and doing, and making changes, because it takes all of that, and to have that in our awareness. The philosophy that we have for all of this is and next slide, is that you were not born bad. You had no control of what was going on around you. And whatever you did to cope was appropriate. And you can change. It's important that this is not your fault. It was what happened to you, and there were times. There's a way to fix it. So now we're going to take a look at Mind Matters, and we're going to take a look at my favorite, next slide, my favorite lessons. And as I said, I found out that people wanted 15 to 20 minute segments. They wanted it in short components. So we wrote this up in about 15 to 20 minute segments, and so that you can do it. All right, so next slide. So some items that go here is that, please keep in mind, this can be done by paraprofessionals. You can add it to other programs. It's still skill building. And in order to reach some of the items here, that you'll need to use an iPhone when you go out to teach them. All right, next one, next slide. This one is so important, and I just want to underline it. You have to go first. You have to learn these skills right along before you ever go in to teach it. Because, you know, the people we work with, they can tell when you're a phony. They can tell when you haven't done your homework and you're busy, you know, you're not preaching, you're not living what you're preaching. So it's important that whoever's teaching this really gets so that they can do it, because some of this stuff is really strange. And if you haven't tried it, and then you don't have any stories about how you have tried it, then you have problems. Please remember, in the manual, there are lots of stories about how I have tried it that you certainly can use, but please go develop your own. Also, I want you to know, when you go to do this, is when you read it in the manual, it looks so easy. But you know what? It isn't easy. And the only way you'll discover that it isn't easy is if you go to do it yourself. And I think that will make a huge difference, is for you to do it yourself. So practice first, okay? Next, relationships come first. When you're working one-on-one with someone, the relationship with the person you serve comes first. And that means you need to be in tune with them. You need to be empathetic. If they've walked in that day and you have an agenda all laid out about what you're going to do, and they have had a major emergency, be prepared that you're going to adjust your schedule and to have that flexibility. I routinely found that when I worked with individuals, they enjoyed me having an idea about what we were going to do and having an agenda. But sometimes that agenda just has to be ignored because their needs are what comes first. And our relationship is what comes first, because in order to make this one-on-one session to come to life, they have to know you care about them. Next slide. So what we're going to do is go through some of my favorite lessons. And so this one, and we're going to do some of these as we go along. I've done, next slide, I've done this in my previous webinars, but we'll just do it again because probably you'll get better at it. This one is peripheral vision. And the purpose of this, remember, this is a self-soothing skill, and we have something called the vagus nerve. And it's amazing. This is the longest nerve we have in our body. It actually, it goes several different directions, but it goes all the way into the top of your head and all the way down to the bottom of your spine. and it both accelerates you and soothes you. So it goes both ways. So a lot of times what we need to do is calm this vagus nerve. So this particular exercise is done to calm the vagus nerve. So humor me and give it a shot. So as you're sitting in your chair, pick a spot directly across from you that you're going to stare at. And then take your hands and put them up in front of you, right in front of your eyes. Okay? And they're about 6 inches in front of your face. But you keep staring at that spot on the wall. And then you move your fingers all the way out to the very edge of your peripheral vision where you can just barely see it. And you hold it for 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, that's it. Now, and by the way, this is in lesson 2. If you'll notice that you can't walk around the world with your fingers out in front of your face and moving them around, people will just think you're weird. Okay, and as I said, you're going to teach people a lot of weird stuff, but we don't want them out there looking weird. So now we're going to do the very same exercise, but we're not going to use our fingers. We're just going to look at that spot across the way, and we're just going to pay attention to our peripheral vision as we're looking forward. Okay. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. When would somebody need to use this skill? There are a lot of times when people could use this skill. One is if you have a small child and they're losing it and you're about ready to lose it too. You can look at your child and do this exercise and you can calm down and be peaceful. Another time is when you go to Health and Human Services offices and one more time they've told you you're in the wrong place and now you have to go to another place and you have an hour bus ride to get to the other place. This is when you would use it. You've just gotten pulled over by a policeman and you need to be really calm. These are great examples for when you can use this self-soothing technique that will not cause you problems because you're using it and you look strange doing it. So this is one of those skills that you could teach in a 15-minute time. Next slide. And then we have in lesson 3 another self-soothing skill. And I love this one. And this is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I found that this is one of the most popular exercises that we have, that more people use this when they also are about ready to lose it because it grounds you, it brings you back to the here and now and gets you out of all the noise and everything that's going on inside your head. And we're going to do this one also. Look around and what are 5 things that you see? Okay, what are 4 things that you hear? What are 3 things that you touch? For me, I can feel the floor underneath my feet. What are 2 things that you smell? And the last one is, what is 1 thing that you taste? Maybe you can still taste the coffee from this morning in your mouth. This exercise really helps build focused attention, and it allows you to be present and look at all the wonder around you, and allows you to focus on the 5 senses. So this is this is really a fabulous exercise that you can do at any time. One of my, Carol Frame, who worked with me in developing this curriculum, told me about hiking in the mountains on the East Coast, and the people she was all working with were losing it, were getting really upset. And she had them all do this exercise, and they all calmed down, and then they could take a look around and see the beautiful environment that they were in. Okay, next one. Next one, okay, is, okay. Next one is the loving kindness practice. This is a meditation that I say every day. And when I don't do it, I sort of miss out on doing it. And this is part of lesson 7. So we'll start out with the first one, and I'd like you to say it with me. May I be safe and protected. May I be peaceful and happy. May I be healthy and strong. May I be at ease, accepting the changing conditions of life. When I started saying this, particularly the last line was really helpful for me, because I would start laughing because nothing in my life ever goes according to my plan. And so I start laughing when, it's just not going my way. So that's, first one was about soothing myself. The next one is for someone else. And this one, I like doing this. You can adjust this for the who's in the room with you. So you may start out, if you're doing a home visitor program, is to say it for the name of your child or your partner, anyone that you're close to. You can add their name in. So I'm just going to put my son's name in here, and I'll go, Donald, may you be safe and protected. May you be peaceful and happy. May you be healthy and strong. And may you be at ease, accepting the changing conditions of life. And I recommend that you say this at least 3 times. And you would also want to add their name to the last sentence. So I would say, Donald, may you be at ease, accepting the changing conditions of life. Okay. All right. Now, next slide. This one is, I have a very strong background in child development, and I'm truly aware that having secure attachment is important, and building secure attachment is important. And for many of the people we work with, they don't notice that there's anybody in their life who's around them to support them. And the research on this is pretty phenomenal. Emily Werner did, over 40 years ago, worked with 700 people in Hawaii and studied them over 40 years and looked at who was resilient and who wasn't. And what she found was the people who were resilient had an adult in their life who they could trust. What I find with the population I've worked with is many times they don't notice that they have one. When I got my training in EMDR, and I was really hesitant about including all of this because the fellow who trained me talked about how sometimes people don't have anyone they trusted, and he talked about using people from television, and one of his clients, the person he could trust, was Hopalong Cassidy. I think today it would be Fred Rogers for a large number of people, is the person who they felt they could trust. The other reason is that they may need to use your name, but they can start looking for it and becoming aware of the possibility that there is one out there for them and that they can look for it. So we're about, and we do several different exercises in this program about building a trusted adult. We have them also, we're not have enough time here today to look at it, but the support system that people have. And I was using this in a low-income high school, and I thought, oh, they're not going to have anyone. What am I going to do? And what I found is by filling out the chart, the people in my class discovered that they had a support system. And I think that as you go through this and go through these lessons, the people you're serving will discover that they have a larger support system than they imagine. Okay, next. We're not going to listen to Katy Perry sing Rise here, but we have a lesson on rhythm, because when people are traumatized, they lose their rhythm. And originally I put happy in here, and the people in my now class now go, oh, that is so old. So I'm suggesting you take a look at Katy Perry's Rise, because her video that goes with this is her struggling and suffering and pulling, and she's walking with a parachute behind her, pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. She leaps off a cliff, goes into the water, has to get out of the water, but at the very end, she is sailing off with this parachute into the distance. And it is, we shall rise. And that's what the message of this song is that we shall rise. Another song that I think is better for us is a song called Brave by Sarah Bareilles, because hers is really about singing out, encouraging other people to be brave and create the life that they want to do. So what we do with this lesson on rhythm is we find inspirational music, and that's what you do in class with this in this session is you have them develop a playlist of inspirational music, and then they can start their day listening to inspirational music, and because music will fill their soul, and what you'll want to do is get up and dance and sing and move to this music, because music can change how we are doing. If you're doing this with in a home visitor program, this would be when you would get the infant up and you would dance with the infant in your hand. You might use some music that is appropriate for the age of your children, and so that they're all there. I mentioned Baby Shark, and every parent I know says, no, 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 we've heard enough of Baby Shark. So, but pick something that's age appropriate for the people you're serving. Okay, next one. All right, lesson 15 to 18 is all focused on self-care. And some of the lessons here are probably the most important in the entire program. And I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about tapping. Remember, I told you that things are really strange in this, and tapping is one of that, or it's called emotional freedom. And what you are going to do is teach the people you're working with to tap on, to have a negative thought, and what you say is, even though I am struggling with this problem, I'm okay. And then you tap on about 8 acupuncture points. And you do that 3 times. And you check and see how disruptive that is. What your goal is is to get them, the person you're serving, that every time they have this negative thought, every time they have this negative feeling, or this negative sensation, they tap on these acupuncture points, eventually until they're gone. One of my favorite stories comes from my husband, who had worked with this one woman, and what he did with her was every time she had experienced a high degree of anxiety or worry, she tapped on it. As I told you, things do not change rapidly. They change gradually over time. And eventually this woman walked in and she said, I figured it out. And he said, what did you figure out? He said, I figured out what happened to me. When I was a young girl, I was molested and got pregnant. I got sent away. I had this baby. They gave the baby away. I went back to stay with my parents, and they never mentioned it again. Yeah, I was not sure whether it had actually ever happened or not. But now I know. And her degree of anxiety went away. Now, I'd like you to know, with this example, we didn't talk about her trauma. As what happens as you finally get calmer and more peaceful, different things start happening. And so I'm not encouraging you to have people go back in their past and relive their past, which is what we now know is re-traumatizing. And what we will do is work on self-soothing until they are calm enough and peaceful enough to deal with whatever happened to them. Sleep is also a major problem for people who've been traumatized, and they don't really know that they can do something to change their sleep habits. So we talk about turning off blue lights, no caffeine, before you go to bed, 3 hours before you go to bed, all the things you need to do to be able to sleep. In exercise, we focus on figuring out what they would like to do for exercise. We keep talking about exercise, and we lose the fact that exercise needs to be fun and something that they enjoy, because as my old PE teacher in college said, we have to exercise for a lifetime. That isn't anything that will come and go. I've included the X program in this curriculum. So that is something that you can do with the people you're serving. So you can do this exercise class with them, and you can pull it up on your iPhone or their iPhone, or you can print it out, and they will have a way of gradually increasing their exercise level over time. Also, another self-care program is that we have a 15-minute yoga class that you can pull up online on your phone, and you can do it together. If you're not in a position to pull it up online, if you have a copy of our curriculum, you have access to our private Facebook page and supplemental material. We have the script for the yoga class so that you can actually read the script and do it with your participant, so that and it's chair yoga. So this is really very beginning and very peaceful. And my recommendation is you do it together. Next slide. Next is, and this one I'll just go over briefly, is that we talk about who do you want to be? What do you want to say is about you? So this is that old values clarification that we used to do back in the 1970s. Who do you want to be? So here is a list of possibilities, and you can come up with other possibilities. And this is going to be your new self-statement. And then we create a shield, and this is a shield from one of our participants. And you'll see it's very simple. You don't have to be a great artist in order to do this. So now, and what you'll do after you do that is that you'll say these new sentences to each other is, I am loyal, I am beautiful, I'm logical, I'm creative, and I am fit. So that they now have a new self-statement. So, our next slide. Okay. Our goal is for you to be resilient. Being resilient is being able to stay calm and in control when facing a challenge, and having the ability to recover and adjust easily to misfortune or change. So, Irene, next slide. This is when you had questions for people to answer, and I don't see where they are.
Oh, well,
Irene.
Rebecca will pull that up. Rebecca,
Okay.
can you pull up the very last poll question? This is kind of a review of what Carolyn mentioned today. And the answer is, or the question is, by practicing the skills in Mind Matters, select one or more of the following. So just indicate any one statement that you feel is what she said, or if it's all of the above. Don't forget to press submit at the bottom. Okay, Rebecca, do you have outcomes for this? Okay, so it looks like 98%. Got it, Caroline. Or
Oh, good. Otherwise, we'll have to start all over again. What I wanted to say, can we go back a slide? Here we go to that list. Can you bring up that list again? The list with the questionnaire. Rebecca, can you bring up that list?
The list for the poll questions?
Yeah.
Can you just, bring up the answer sheet again.
Results.
You want the results?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. What we want to, by practicing the skills in this class and letting the learning to sink in, your reactivity changes and your brain grows. You notice what's going on in your body. You're aware of your body's sensations, emotions, and feelings. And then you can think about what is going on too. So it's not only being aware, but you can think about it. And then what's fabulous is you can be quiet. You can be quiet. And then you have choices. And you can start accepting and understanding yourself and other people. Our goal is to change our internal reactivity so you can create something new, rich, and wonderful. And that's why we're practicing all of these skills in Mind Matters. Okay, now back to next slide. So, where do we go from here? We're very excited that we're having our first research study being done at the University of Louisville, and the University of Texas, San Antonio are checking into this. And what I want you to know, everything that's in this curriculum is research-based. We just haven't had doing it as a curriculum as a whole. And I'm very excited to hear how, because this is such a new program, that we've sold over 250 copies all across the United States. We need to hear how things are going, ways that you think it can be improved. I believe that this is a community project, and I want to hear from you. And if you purchase that curriculum, please join our private Facebook group. And if you don't have a way of getting in tune with that, please contact the Dibble Institute, and we will get you in contact with our private Facebook page. It is a very slow Facebook page. I don't post a lot of things on it, so I'm not going to be filling up your time, but please, let's all work together to make this even more effective. Next slide. Okay, so one more time, I want to say that this is designed to meet your needs. And if you don't have, and you're not using Mind Matters, we can give you a free online 15-day digital review copy if you're interested, and just contact us at the Dibble Institute to make that happen. Okay, all right. Now, are there any questions?
I do see some questions, Carolyn.
Oh.
The very first one that I received was if you could define paraprofessional.
Oh. Anybody, oh. That means you do not need to be a licensed therapist to run this program. If you're a good teacher, that is the requirement. So having a professional attitude and a professional demeanor in the way you work, that's what paraprofessional means. It means that you are not necessarily licensed or have a degree in social work. Okay?
Great. Also, someone reminded me whether or not your slides will be available to anyone listening to the webinar. So I believe, Rebecca, we can attach the slides in our follow-up message to all who participated. Is that correct?
I believe so. I will check with Kathy.
Okay. And if not, you can call into Kathy or email Kathy at dibbleinstitute.org, and she'll be glad to be sure to get those to you.
Irene, I don't think we did a poll question on how many people are currently using Mind Matters.
Right.
Can we do that poll question now?
Okay, sure. Carolyn has a question for you as well. Can you pull that one up, Rebecca? There you go. So it's just a yes or no answer. Are you already implementing a program that deals with trauma? Okay. Can you show the results, Rebecca? All right.
Oh, good. All right, that's wonderful. I'm really happy to see that. Yes.
Okay. Well, one of the other questions was whether or not, oh, I'm sorry. My screen changed. How has this curriculum been used in other than one-on-one sessions?
Oh, this curriculum, this curriculum is being used in high schools, middle schools, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. It's being used in family resource centers, so that the focus is really running this entire curriculum, which is about 12 lessons, about an hour apiece. So that has been the primary way that this curriculum has been used, and it's being used in places where there are people with high adverse childhood experiences. So that's what we do. Okay, so it's most often used in group settings.
And for one-on-one, what you've created is an appendix to the original Mind Matters that addresses how to use it in one-on-one sessions, correct?
That's correct. Thank you, Irene.
Surely. Okay, so Amy here, she says she has Mind Matters curriculum. They only have 12 sessions. Can you tell me where we can get the fuller version? And that is the appendix. So with that, okay. Amy, do you have an answer to that, Carolyn? If not, I can address it.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and address it, Irene?
Okay, so we will have that available for you. And I believe it will be as we will be sending that out. Is that what you understand, Carolyn? We'll be sending that out.
That's what I understand is we will be sending out this appendix for the shorter lessons, so that you can do it in these 15 to 20-minute lessons. Mm-hmm. Also, if you want more lessons and you have time to do it, we have additional lessons when you download the information from our website, that there are some additional lessons that if you want to add them to what you're doing. So not only do we have the PowerPoint available for you to teach, we have additional lessons that you can add if you want more than the 12 lessons that are in the original curriculum.
We have one request. Can you bring up the list of the Code of Honor again on that slide, showing the Code of Honor? Rebecca, can you do that? There.
There we are.
You want to say a little bit more about that? There was clarification on that?
Yeah, okay. What I can tell you is we end up having people out of this list, or they can make up their own list. These are just suggestions. And pick ones that they think they already have. And then they may also pick ones that they want to have. And those become their new self-statement. Then they build this shield that, so we're using the other part of their brain to put this in their brain about who they are. If you're doing this in a class or you're doing 101, then they actually say a sentence that says, I am loyal, I am logical, so that they get used to acknowledging this new part of being who they are. I have noticed recently that there are a lot of movies and things on this order that are going back to these medieval times, and codes of honor are being looked at again. So, and there are a couple of things that I think are special, and I want to mention this, is that we do a lot of things in this curriculum about shifting to something positive. For example, the loving kindness practice, when you start saying it to each other, for many of the people in our class or the people we serve, it is the first time anybody has said those kind and loving things to them. And the same goes with the Code of Honor, that they've heard that they were stupid and not good enough, and now we have a chance to reinforce that they are more, they have something other that they are, and to begin that path with that kind of sentence. We become who we're told we are, and this gives us an opportunity to do something different.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn, for that. And I've had several questions here about working in with corrections, working in different settings to different types of clients, like victims advocates and what else? Juvenile detention centers and so forth. And definitely all of these can be used. And as far as permission to use the curriculum, if you're working with an organization, you definitely would want their permission, but you don't need our permission to work in any diverse situation. Correct?
In fact, we're very excited about thinking about you using this in all of these different situations. And I personally want to hear from you about how things go. And I consider me sort of a personal consultant as you're doing this, because we want you to be successful. So I'm available to talk with you and share share your adventure in bringing this to life.
Oh, and one other thing is, I think the question to clarify, the person that asked this, to teach this to providers. So I think it is, once we have this, can we teach the program to those who are going to provide the program?
This program is an out-of-the-box program. My expectation is, and being that I was an executive director of a nonprofit, I kept hiring people to come out and lead a training, and then we train all these people, and then they go get jobs someplace else, so then I'd have to bring somebody else in. So I always knew that I needed a program that could grow exponentially. Now, we are available to do trainings for you, and we can come out and do a training for your organization. Please make this curriculum grow and get this information out there. And if you have 2 or 3 people who get really good at this and they go out and work it, and then they start teaching other people within your organization, we're not in a position to say, no, don't do it. Of course, we would prefer to have you hire us to train, but we are invested in every person, by the way, who leads a class, for them to have an instructor manual. And what we have learned is that it is very important that everybody who's in your class gets a participant journal so that they can keep track of their practice time, because it's the practice that makes it all work.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. And we've come to the end of our time. So I just want to mention, as on this slide, we do have recorded the webinar. It will be available for revisiting, to review again in 3 business days at the DibbleInstitute.org webinar archives. And if you need any information, if you want that digital copy, you can contact Kathy at DibbleInstitute.org or myself, Irene, at DibbleInstitute.org. And I just want to advise you of next month's webinar, that it will be November 13th, the foundations of how to build and sustain the communication pipeline with young adults, which I'm really excited about as well. Now, we want you to stay in touch. So can you go back to that slide? We have subscribed to our free monthly newsletter that gives you updates on current curriculum or programming and research on youth and young adults. You can text Dibble to 22828, follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook, or call us 800-695-7975. Those whose questions we did not get to, we will answer separately for sure. So don't feel that you have not been listened to. Thank you so much, Carolyn. And
it was my pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to hearing from you next month. Bye.